This is Bless Radio, and it's just gone past 6 p.m. UK time. This is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad in Southeast London. Very shortly, I'll be joined by Gregory. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And here my colleague Gregory has just joined us. How are you doing, Gregory, and how is the weather where you are?
One is fine.
I can call it warm rather than hot today, and been a little bit of breeze as well. Although I will say you can feel a heat in it, if I'm honest, as if it's very hot. I'm going to just find out the temperature, because at one point it felt only 25 degrees, but I thought it might be actually higher than that. Let me just see temperature. Okay, it's going to tell me 24. Yes, it has not. Yes. So today it reached 24, not more than that. So which is much milder than what we've had up to now. 30 degrees easily. So yes, welcome listeners to the Spiritual Discussion Program. As I say, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. And every week we have a new topic for discussion. The topic for tonight is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. It takes courage to recognize the truth. And if you wish to take part with any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number. I'm going to give you the prefix as well if you're outside of UK. So the number is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, near towards the bottom, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life, explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for our discussion tonight is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. It takes courage to recognize the truth. And if you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number. Even if you're outside of UK, I'm going to put in the prefix here, which is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'll repeat that. It's +44 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there is one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the homepage, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. Now, I just want to sort of explain how we came to the topic tonight, which again is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. So in this world of today, with politics, always we see there's this populism that has risen. People are being promised simple, in quote, simple solutions in powerful, straightforward, direct messages to the people, to the so-called problems of today. There's a sense that the masses are being led or even misled, like sheep, like a herd mentality. However, when we look at these promises or scrutinize these promises, one wonders if in reality they will be really effective or result in perhaps even more problems. So that is where the topic was inspired from, how it takes courage to recognize the truth. Now, I like to, as always, look in the dictionary for the meaning of the words in the topic, and the first key word I looked up was courage. And the meaning I was given there was the ability to do something that frightens one. Bravery is another word for it. So, Gregory, how's this meaning of courage?
You said it's the ability to do something that frightens one.
Yes. And bravery. Another word is bravery.
Then you have to repeat the definition. You have is it courage and bravery or something? I'm just trying to ensure if it is courage.
Yes.
The ability to do something that frightens one. Is that all?
Maybe actually, let me see. Okay, there is an alternative. Let me call the alternative. So, because as you said, that is a little bit, how can I say, the definition is not very, let's say, the best one. So let me look at this, another one. which I looked up as well. It says the ability to control fear or to be willing to deal with something that is dangerous, difficult, or unpleasant. So maybe that is a little bit better. The ability to control fear and be willing to deal with something that is dangerous, difficult, or unpleasant.
Well, that is helpful, although it's not the key thing that's one we should be expecting in a forum like this.
Okay. Maybe, Gregory, you could give let's say, a better definition or more suitable definition for this, for our discussion.
Well, when courage is mentioned, a concept must come in. This is that concept of there are challenges, and you have that individual pursuing the challenges, and in spite of all the risks, knowing how to manage the risks, knowing how to manage these challenges, using the tool it has. That is the seed. That is the beginning of courage.
Let me just, let's say, summarize, or not summarize, but say it in my own words. So, so basically, it's facing the challenges one faces. Sorry, that's repeating the word facing. So yes, handling the challenges that one faces with the tools in our hands. Is that what you're saying? Let me just.
Yes, confronting the challenges that one that is there with the tool that the individual has. That's one we refer to as courage. The tools which one hasn't mentioned, but you must have the tool to be able to deal with it. Otherwise, yes, it becomes rashness.
But Gregory, there's some I sort of listening to what you're saying, but there's something I sense from the word courage, which is standing above, let's say, the norm. So it's not just having tools and using the tools. Let's say there's more to it than that. I believe the word courage, it's an extra, something extra within it. The word implies something more than the normal. Maybe the word normal is not quite what I want to say, but it's got to be something extra within it, that word courage, because everybody can make, in quotes, an effort to do something, but that doesn't need to have necessarily a courage in it. For me, courage implies something a little bit stronger within the effort. So is that what we are talking about?
Well, you said something extra. What will that extra be?
There has to be some intention, something more than just, again, what I mean is stronger. That's the word I want to, yes, courage. As I say, if you just say it the way you said it initially, it sounds like everybody has the courage to do whatever it needs to be done. It's like, it's nothing special on that. But for me, the word courage implies there's something special required, and an extra effort, whatever the effort might be. So there's something, it's not just I have a tool and I just use the tool. There's something deeper, stronger, as I say, than just the word I have the tools and I use my tools.
Yes, but we haven't mentioned what that particular tool is likely to be, and therein lies what it encompasses generally.
Okay, let's bear with that then, yes. Because there might be a tool that we are not aware what we are supposed to be using. Okay, all right.
Or let me just go a bit further.
Right.
The tool which we have, our thoughts is a tool. Our intuitions, these are tools, because that's the communication between the spirit and the body. The words we have, these are tools. And it is what, if we pursue the challenges, if we confront the challenges with our intuition, in spite of the difficulties, then we are courageous, because we will not give up. If, however, we do not use our intuition in pursuing that which we sense is beneficial. It means we give up. If, however, we pursue a particular challenge without our thoughts or intuitions coming in, most of the time it becomes rashness. You might as well see, a plane falling, and you say you are courageous. You just go, you want to go hold it, you want to stop it from falling. Well, one will call that rashness and not courage. Courage has to know what to do, when to do it, in spite of the challenges that it perceives. So the courage which we are referring to is that which emanates from one's intuition.
Thanks a lot for this answer and clarification, and even building the picture into bigger picture, so that we can actually pick up what you're referring to, Gregory. Thank you for that. So we're definitely going to explore that more as we continue. So thank you for that. Okay, the next keyword I have in our topic, just to remind everybody, the topic tonight is it takes courage to recognize the truth. So we looked at word courage. Now the next keyword is recognize. So I looked that up, of course, in the dictionary, and what I got was two meanings there. To know someone or something because you have seen or heard him or her or experienced it before. Let me repeat that. To recognize, which is recognize. To know someone or something because you have seen or heard him or her or experienced it before. How's that, Gregory?
That is helpful, but not precise enough.
Okay, let's look at the second one. To identify someone or something from knowledge. And let me just give an example of this one. They say doctors are trained to recognize the symptoms of different diseases. So let me repeat it. Yeah, go on, Greg.
Helpful. That is quite helpful because of that expression, identify.
Very good, very good. So that's good, yes. That is listener, that's one of the reasons why I like to look up in the meaning of the words of the topic in the dictionary, so that we are looking at this in the same concept. We're talking on the same page, not one person has one meaning and another person has different meaning. And through this discussion, we are able to hopefully be talking on the same page. Now, let's look at the next keyword, which is truth. So there I have, again, let me see. I think I'll just give this meaning only. So this is the meaning of truth. The state or quality of being in accordance with fact or reality. How's that one, Gregory?
That is an intellectual description of it.
Okay.
It may be helpful, but with our discussion, if I may ask you briefly, at the beginning, you read out something, and for one who is listening, if they have listened carefully, they would have identified the tool to recognize the truth. Can you remember what you read at the beginning?
I can remember, and I can also read again. Basically,
please.
Let me read it. It's better to read it so there's no mistake. Yeah, that way. Let me see. I just make sure I've got the right place. Yeah. Okay. This is just this particular paragraph I'm going to read now. So this is what is the text that I always read is called "What is the Grail Message?"
Yes, I think there were two.
Yes, there are two lines.
Read. Okay.
Yes, yes. So it is. So the Grail Message, just to say, it is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experience of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses, Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to stress.
Right.
That
And
means you already gave the answer while you read that out.
okay, so we have to use the intuitive perception
Correct.
to discover if something is the truth.
That is why
And
one referred to the tools that the individual has.
and the next line is also relevant. It says, combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is
Correct.
no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses.
I think you have answered all the questions.
Okay, so we don't have
So
to do that.
what is left?
So what do we need to discuss? Okay,
Well, now you understand that it's good, and aptly you read these things out every time, and one has
yes,
to listen carefully. But the answers are already there.
yes. And
Thank you.
yet, for those of that's what let's say those of us who had the advantage of having come across these words already, it's let's say more straightforward. But for others who are still on a journey, not that somebody's ahead of anybody, on a journey to discover this, what is the truth, let's say, then they still, let's say, need to work out what is the approach that needs to, how you're supposed to assess something. So yes, so for this reason the show must continue. Okay, okay. Now let us see. In my usual style, in my current way of doing program, I always check with Google AI, even though I know it's only a machine. It's not really, and it's not a spiritual thing. But in any case, it is good for finding, checking through what is out there, let's say, and coming across something, making a statement from it. So let us see. What I put there in the Google is the same as the topic exactly. It takes courage to recognize the truth. Then it came up with this. Recognizing the truth is one of the most profound acts of bravery because it forces us to dismantle the comfortable illusions we build to protect ourselves. While society often celebrates courage, the courage required to speak the truth to others, the internal battle to simply acknowledge what is real, especially when it hurts, is where true psychological and emotional strength is forged. So, okay, let me just, Gregory, I'm going to ask you to comment on that just in a moment. I just want to repeat it actually. Recognizing the truth is one of the most profound acts of bravery because it forces us to dismantle the comfortable illusions we build to protect ourselves. While society, let me stop there. Let me stop on that one, Gregory. How these words, are they, how can I say, valid?
Well, you referred to that statement is referring to the comfortable illusions. Those illusions cannot be the truth anyway. And when one engages oneself into illusions, that individual will not come to recognize the truth. It's like a soldier that is fighting the wrong battle, whereas the battle he needs to fight is like it's read out in the AI thing. There is this internal battle. That battle should be something else, should be fought, not with the facts one has found here and there about people's opinion. That battle is a personal battle in which the individual will use not only what it has found around, but also through one's reflection, and above all, to use one's intuitions. For the intuition is the voice or the expressions which the spirit uses and recognizes. And it is the spirit that counts. Therefore, any individual which is not using its intuition, is fighting, strictly speaking, a losing battle.
Thanks for that, Gregory. Of course, we mentioned this illusions, and what I was going to say to that is people are not aware of the illusions around them. They have accepted something as the truth, or to be correct, let's say, and what they have accepted may be wrong, but they don't know that. So that is an illusion that you not knowingly, if you saw an illusion and you knew it, then of course, how can I say, you're not going to take it too seriously because you know that's an illusion. But when you don't know that something you think is true, but actually it's not true, and of course, that will you would not realize in that moment that it's an illusion, because otherwise why would you follow it or believe in it? But yes, you discover that is an illusion. So that way, of course, suddenly you think, oh no, that's not correct. So it's a wake-up call when you discover that. So now, and again, I keep wanting to repeat the topic title is it takes courage to recognize the truth. So, and we've referred to courage in reference in the context of using our intuition. So on the surface, the courage sounds like, oh, bravery. I need strength to achieve this or that. But behind that is something, let's say, even, let's say, unbeknownst to us, is the intuition that is actually driving these things. So we need to uncover all these things. So to really, recognize, as we say, recognize the truth. Now, okay. I'm just going to say, yes, Gregory and listeners, well, there's this common thing, common saying, ignorance is not an excuse, especially when it comes to the law. I know they're talking about earthly law. So say you are, well, let's say you're in your own country and there are certain traffic laws that you're supposed to follow when you're driving. And somehow, let's say there are 20 laws or whatever the number of laws are, and a few of them you are not aware or you have forgotten, whatever it is the issue. And let's call it, that is an ignorance on your side. And then you break those laws, one of those 20 laws that you didn't know about or were not aware. And you're found out, you're caught on that. And then, of course, whatever they do, the police will do to you or the law will do to you concerning that. And then you'll think, oh, I was not aware, which is called, that's why they say ignorance is not an excuse. Then I think about the world, with all the people in the world, there's so many things we are ignorant about. Forget about just the traffic laws. There's so many things that we don't know. And when I say that, of course, for example, if you're not a pilot, you wouldn't know how to fly normally a plane. Okay, so you're ignorant of that. But we are talking about just the regular practical things that we face. And there's some, you can call it everyday things, and yet we could be ignorant about them. And we have to live, do something with that ignorance, and being even unaware of the ignorance. So that's, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but I just want to give that sort of background picture that this is the world we are living in. And then we say it takes courage to recognize the truth. So there's a world out there that we are doing things in ignorance. Now, Gregory, I could say it out of habit. I could say it out of this is how behavior that you know through your background, your family, or whatever friends, the neighborhood that you live in. These things you have followed them, okay, and some of those things because you're ignorant, they are going to affect you at some point when, let's say, something goes wrong. Now, so the question is there, Gregory, when things go wrong, I guess I could say that, and then you have to you realize, oh, I didn't know that. It could be an accident that you were driving, let's say, and a pedestrian came across the road and you didn't see them because you were not looking in that one moment, just one moment, this happened. So you could say, oh, that was an ignorance. That was, one moment of, let's say, not being alert. So my question there, Gregory, is it possible, Gregory, to be always aware of everything going around you? It's like this alertness, 100% alertness, because we are human, and there's always moments when you could say, rest a little. So is it possible, Gregory, to always be alert?
Yes, it is possible to be vigilant and to be alert. However, this only comes through practice. When one has kept the ability to weigh and to examine again and again, it becomes part of that individual. And subsequently, that which the individual has been using all this while, it becomes a habit. And therefore, many an error are minimized. After all, many persons, you need to breathe, you need to eat, and you scarcely make mistakes when you eat, though sometimes people choke on their food, but it's minimal. So as long as one uses these, particularly that intuition the individual has, again and again, and becomes a habit, one should call it a spiritual habit, then the likelihood is that you will already have found solutions even before they arrive. A very simple example was what we were just discussing. You yourself intuitively had read out the answer to the questions you were going to ask. Because over time, again and again, you have been using this.
Thanks very much for that, Gregory. So what you're pointing to is that, yes, make it a spiritual habit to use the intuition in being alert and assessing things around you. So
correct.
Yes, and it takes practice over time, to reach let's say a good level where, like eating food, it'll be like a normal habit. So thank you for that. Now, dear listeners, I want to let you know you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message, by Uprushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE And the topic that we're discussing tonight is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. It takes courage to recognize the truth. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, and even if you're outside of the UK, I'm going to give you the prefix. So the number is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. We are also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's again the number 1 there, space Grail Message, space the topic of the show, which is It Takes Courage to Recognize the Truth. And after the show ends, which is 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to a recording of this show also on YouTube. Again, go to youtube.com and type in the search box the same words, which are Bless Radio 1, that's now number 1 there, space Grail Message, space It Takes Courage to Recognize the Truth. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we're broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.FM/radio/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 there. Now, let me look at some examples where people have, let's say, beliefs or made statements, and and a lot of people, let's say, follow that. So what I want to say there, I'm talking now from a spiritual teachings or religious teachings or faiths. They make the claim that they have the truth, making it sound like as if they're the only one or have an exclusive claim on the truth. And one wants to verify this. And of course, I know people who say, I don't have the time to go through all these different teachings. And yet we know there are differences in these teachings, so that makes it impossible that they can all be correct. And I want to give some example of that. This is in this particular case, we're comparing, or if I say comparing is probably not the right word, looking at, I should say, because this is not about putting one religion against another religion. No, it's the whole idea is to examine what what we are presented with, and discovering the truth. Because the idea is to have the courage, to take courage to recognize the truth. So the example I want to give is Christianity claims Jesus to be divine, the Son of God, whereas Islam rejects that, and even it rejects the Trinity. So there we have two, in quotes, contradictory claim. And so, not that I'm trying to put one against the other. I just want to, the idea is to get to the truth. So Gregory, now these are the claims that have been made. Let me just repeat that. One is saying, Christianity is saying Jesus claims to be divine and he's the Son of God, while Islam rejects that and even rejects the Trinity. So Gregory, how can one, and even if a simple way to look at it, say, how can God have a son if he's like the Almighty One, the Creator? He doesn't need sun. He doesn't need. So there's these logical issues in that one has to face. So Gregory, how can one work out what is the truth in this particular example here?
Well, thanks for this particular question, because it bothers many a person. And why it's very challenging for many, the solution for it is very simple, in the sense that such a statement that Christians have made about the divinity of Christ, or like you said, maybe another religion will say the non-divinity of Christ, such statements have been grossly distorted because they have the wrong concepts, or they have mumbled different concepts which lacks clarity. For if only they would reflect what divinity is, they could also come to a conclusion by themselves. But to come to conclusions by themselves, they have to weigh and examine the works of Christ. To weigh not only in deeds, to weigh in thoughts, and above all, to weigh using one's intuition. For it is the intuition that passes that information to the Spirit. It is the Spirit that comes to recognition. So, by his works of Christ, through one's intuition, the individual who is seeking will come to a recognition. But because many have not examined what Christ has said, they lack the understanding. Even so-called many a Christian who hold on to the Trinity, the question now remains, how do they understand it? So, to believe without understanding is indolence, is laziness. The individual must make that effort to understand aright. Therefore, if one examines the works of Christ, which works have been made possible through the power and also through the law. The power is that which animates. The power is what flows in within the light and animates. That means it gives motion, it makes movement possible. Now one can already see that power does not just animate anything, but must animate a structure, a form. Therefore, one must consider that that which issues from the Lord Almighty are radiations. It is radiations that take on form. of the Almighty, one shouldn't tie a form to it. However, these radiations do not act in an arbitrary manner. They act in a logical manner. These radiations act in accordance with the will that made it possible for creation to come into existence. These radiations are such that when they take on form outside of divinity, they need to be activated. So one can already perceive, although faintly, that there is the power, there is the will, and there is the radiation. So the concepts which the individual must take and hold tight to, which will help the individual to explain many a thing that puzzles it, particularly when it comes to it is divinity or to the works of Christ, is that on the right-hand side, you have the radiation personified by Him, the love of the Almighty, whom Christ is. On the left-hand side, there is the will. It is this will that formed the laws of creation through which all that exists rests. And then, in the center, above the love, above the will, is the power. This is the triad. And Christ, from his origin, drew from this power to enable his works, which he did before men. By their works we shall know them. So for many a seeker, be whatever religion, they need to examine the works using their intuition, with the concept now presented of the triad. They should use that to examine whatever works that there is. In such a way, they will come to understand the height through which an individual came in order to walk here on earth. Again, by his works, Christ revealed whom he is. For only a personality such as himself is capable of such works.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer and explanation, which shows clearly that there are things that we are familiar with, power, will, love, and we don't reflect, oh, how does it come about? You know, how does the Creator work his activity? And as you say, examine the works of Jesus, his words. Yes, we know things are not always clear when you read some things in the Bible or wherever, you might find those references. However, as Gregory has pointed out, once you apply the intuition, there's moments at least you will notice, you will have an understanding or get a, yes, this is right, this makes sense. Things will become clearer. Because the real point is to look at it from a spiritual understanding. We take things literally, which we are very common, used to that. However, sometimes when you read these words literally, they don't even make any sense. So, assuming the words have been expressed correctly, if they don't make sense in a literal way, one must wonder, oh, maybe it doesn't mean literally, it means something else. And that means, okay, spiritual sense. Well, do we have any clue what is spiritual sense? So the intuition is the one that is the spiritual sense. Whether we realize it or not, let's say if one tries to use the intuition, then you can test it if it's making sense or it's not making sense. So that way you can have your own confidence. Is somebody just telling you something, or actually you have sensing that this is correct? So it's not just talking and making theory. No, they are real practical answers to these questions. But it requires us, as Gregory started at the beginning, there's a tool that we, let's say, have. We may have an idea about it, but we don't really properly appreciate, we don't even recognize this tool. So that is another, makes it difficult when you don't recognize the tool, how you're going to use it and apply it. The tool we are referring to is, of course, the intuition here. So thank you so much, Gregory. Now, I've got another example of this, let's say, differences in claims from spiritual faiths. This time it is, let me make sure I got it here. Yes. We call them the Abrahamic faith, the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They call them the monotheistic, meaning one God, belief in one God. And then we have another faith called Hinduism, where there are many gods. And even there's a concept that human being can become God, which it is made clear that these there's only the one God in the monotheistic faiths, and there is not, and the worship can only be to the one God and not to these others, which this other in Hinduism is done. Again, I'm not trying to make one religion against another religion. It's all about looking as a neutral person, you can say, reflecting on what people are making a claim and saying, working out, can we verify that? And Gregory, there's another issue. They say no one has seen this God, one God. While the Hindus, they make many statues of their gods with a little g, we can say, because they know this God is for this particular purpose, or stands for something like that. While the one creator, let's say, is supposed to be have no form and no one can see. So Gregory, with this type of how can I say situation, how can one verify about that there is one God or many?
Again, very simply, what does the verification is the Spirit. And sadly, many do not have the right concept of spirit. For that which is spirit needs power to survive. That which is referred to as the Almighty, that is completely independent, whereas others are dependent on the Almighty. In that particular case, you find many who are talking of, say there are many gods, are only referring to those they can perceive, maybe intuitively, who are basically directed above them. They can perceive that there are streams of power coming through these persons, through these vessels, and because of their level of understanding, they hold these vessels as gods. And that again is only verified that they are able to perceive that power issues through these vessels. But power itself, that which is real power, which is completely independent, no one who has form can hold it in their hands. They can only have a sensing that that power is such that you cannot create a form out of it. For the power animates. The power is life. Therefore, you will find that which the many Hindus, or whatever name we care to call them, have identified are only vessels that permit themselves to stream the power which they have received. The streaming is not arbitrary. The streaming of that power is in accordance with the will of the Almighty. That will is what directs this power. That will has been hewn into creation, or is represented as the laws of creation. So it is the laws of creation that directs this power. So you then find that the scenario where the concepts of power is distorted, many now consider the channels as the power. One used that expression, distorted, because deep within them, they are able to perceive power that even streams through them, just as it streams with these vessels which are high above them. Therefore, you find that form which they themselves have perceived could not have been the source of all power. The power itself, which is completely independent, is above all that, which is in creation. For creation depends on that power. As one goes higher, you have that realm which is described as divinity. That particular realm has always been, because the radiations that stream out of the source has always been. It has always been, so one would not bring the concept of time into it. Therefore, you will find it stands. However, one can bring the concept of form, because many a form which some have been able to perceive, they are able to some extent, or pictures are shown to them of that which lie above creation. Many of these that is being discussed here, the framework can be found within this work, in the light of truth, the Grail Message of Abrushin. This work is not to be undertaken lightly. That means one should make the greatest possible effort to take the scenarios, the pictures which have been presented to the individual, to examine these scenarios, to examine them not only in thoughts, but also through one's intuition, and then finally verify these things in deeds. For if the individual is earnest in his or her seeking, that experience that the individual needs will come its way. And in experiencing, the spirit now knows it. And once the spirit knows it, it will understand the framework that is required to understand, to grasp those manifestations which are of the spirit. And then gradually it will find that that which the human personality experiences here on earth is only temporary, and that the real experiencing is of the spirit. Once that knowledge sinks in within the individual, subsequently the type of questions it will ask will change. And then the concept of the Trinity becomes so very clear, and many a thing which has disturbed it, all this while that individual can already see through, and therefore can weave his or her way, knowing where it stands within creation, knowing what it must do to get to its origin, which origin is started from as an unconscious spirit seed grain, as an unconscious spirit seed spark. And therefore, in experiencing, gradually came to consciousness, and in its further experiencing became self-conscious. That means the spirit has awoken and works in accordance with the road map which has been placed into creation for the human personality or for the human spirit to become conscious and thereafter what it must do. That is what creation is about. And the concepts which one has only touched very, very minimally today becomes very clear. So many a listener are invited to examine this work to have clearer explanations.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this. Again, the picture you have painted for us and giving the explanation, which requires, as you say, the study of the Grail Message to get a detailed picture, as Gregory is only able to touch, let's say, to give a outline picture, and also for anybody to appreciate this picture, the depth of understanding required is it requires like really knowing or having because it's a detailed explanation of this process of how this creation works and what is in the creation and even outside of the creation. So there is a big picture which, let's say, it will take quite some effort to recognize it, as we're saying, recognizing the truth. So it takes quite some effort for that. But the Spirit is the way we can recognize it and absorb it. So yes, listeners, I want to let you know that you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin. If you want to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. It takes courage to recognize the truth. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number. And even if you're outside, I'm going to give you the whole prefix, which is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, you come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And we are also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again that's the number 1 there, space Grail Message, space the topic of our show for tonight. It is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. And then after the show ends, which is 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to the recording of the show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in this search box the same words, which are Bless Radio 1 that's the number 1, space, Grail Message, space. It takes courage to recognize the truth. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO .fm/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number 1. Now, I'm going to continue looking at the, how can I say, spiritual claims. And this time, it's going to be within the same faith, because each faith have, they say they have their scriptures, and in them, in their statements are made, and sometimes it sounds contradictory, or definitely something is not making sense. So this one, I'm choosing to do from Islam for this particular example. Again, it's not picking on anything, just as an example. And this one, it says, this is in Quran, in Surah, they call it Surah, which is the chapters. Chapter Surah 19, verse 67. Which states the man was created from nothing. That's in in one particular surah. Then another surah, it says, okay, this is like three different places even, or 4 different places, and it's just, I'm just going to quote the one word that makes it that man was created from. It says Surah 15 verse 26, dust. It says from dust. So man was created from, sorry, the first one is clay. I'm wrong, sorry to say that. That's clay. Another surah, it says dust. Another one, it says a drop of fluid or blood clot. So the point is, in one place, it is saying human beings created from nothing. In other places, it's saying it is created from some, they use the word material, like clay, dust, drop of fluid, or blood clot. So Gregory, now that sounds illogical that human beings are made from, well, when I say illogical, in one place it says from nothing, another place it says from something. And then one will wonder, which one is correct?
Again, you find that the reporter, the person who put these things together and had to compile the real picture which is they wish to convey, sometimes is very challenging. Therefore, in deep within them, they could sense that power issues from somewhere. And that being the case, they know about forms. However, when it comes to expressing themselves clearly, it becomes very difficult. On the one hand, someone said clay. Someone said dust. Whether it is clay or it is dust, these are material things. The intuitive picture that the individual must have there, these are the radiations. Which radiations one may also categorize as substantiate radiation. It is the substantiate radiations from out of the Almighty, which has taken on form which form divinity, and as things cool down subsequently, in the world of matter, it has taken on form. That is why it's called matter. And as we have the human personality of flesh and blood, again, these are radiation containers that have taken on form. That is what they themselves are referring to in the second reading that you made. Whereas in the first one, you find that things have been interpreted not precisely. One should not condemn these people, but one must understand the limitations of the language which they had to use. For consider very carefully, here we are discussing, no one has ever seen one's thoughts. And when thoughts are referred to, unless you yourself are able to think, you would say, no, I cannot see them, I cannot touch them, therefore they don't exist. The human personality has intuition. That in itself is a fact. So,
how can I say, understanding that, for example, the limitation of the language and into material words, let's say a process. So to describe that in a simple way, one person like a poet can describe it in a particular way, and another person, let's call it a different poet, the same vision or picture, they will say it in a different way. It's almost like two people, they will never say the same words because it's not about that one is contradicting the other one, no. That's what they see, and they describe it in the language that they can speak. Another one speaks the language that they can speak, according to the level that they are, they speak, and they're describing the same thing. So it is possible. And also, like I said earlier, if you take things absolutely literally, you read it here, you read it there, it doesn't make any sense. Then you say, oh, that can't be right. Yeah, but maybe you think twice and say, oh, in this case, let's say spiritual. So spiritual is not literal, it's not material. It's non-material. So you try to describe something non-material in material. One person call it clay, one person call it dust, one person, whatever the words are. That's how it has been described. So it requires some, as we human beings, to also make a right assessment rather than just jumping to conclusion that this is right and that is wrong. In fact, the more you reflect, you realize, oh, they're actually just a way of saying it. It's, if you look at it very well, let me make it even a simple one, that in Arabic, God is called Allah, and let's say in English, we call him God. And then some people will argue, no, they're two different things. No, it's just a different language. So we start arguing about something which is a nonsense. So this is how, let's say, clarity is necessary, and this is talking about even spiritual clarity here. So these concepts need to be understood in that way. And hopefully this program gets us to see it like this, so what you think is that something may be wrong, actually it's not wrong, it's just being expressed in a different way.
May I come in a bit?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, when you look into the atmosphere and you cannot see anything, you cannot see the raindrop, you cannot see the moisture, because you are looking, the perceptive capacity of your eyes is so limited. You cannot see the moisture. in the atmosphere, in the weather, but when it cools down, raindrops will start falling. If one were asked a question, where did the water come from? For many, they will say from nowhere, because they could not perceive or they could not see that in the atmosphere, in the weather surrounding the earth, there's moisture, or there is the water vapor that has condensed. And from that point of view, unless the individual is reflecting intuitively, the likelihoods that they will make sweeping statements, and therein lies what error will come up subsequently in the language. Therefore, those who said from clay or from dust, the picture of dust, one can see some form of radiation. The picture of clay, that is more solid. One can see matter taking on form. So all these things are helpful, but it requires that the individual must weigh, must examine.
Thank you very much for that, Gregory. Just looking at another text which we could talk about. Let me see. Oh, let me just make sure. Okay. Yes, again, this one is from the Hindu tradition, you can call it. This is non-violence versus the duty in war. So there's one, let's say, text or principle, which is called absolute non-violence. The principle, this is from Hinduism I'm talking about. It is ahimsa, which is non-harm, is praised as the highest moral virtue amongst most Hindu texts. Absolute non-violence. So this is a principle of non-harm, non-violence. Then there's one scenario where it looks like it's called justified warfare. This is where there's some story where which they call again in one of the Hindu texts, it talks about Krishna is actively encouraging a warrior to fight a righteous war and commit acts of violence because it is his specific caste duty. So yes, in Hinduism they do have castes, and there's even a warrior caste. So Gregory, so this is where it becomes, or even listeners, this is where things, on one side they say do no harm, no violence, and then in another scenario they say yes, this is your duty to fight in the war and commit violence as part of your duty. Not, of course, we're not talking about in a vacuum. There's something going on, obviously, which has resulted in that. So Gregory, so we get these issues or scenarios, if I can say, where in one occasion it's the principle is not to have any violence, and then in some other occasion that well, absolute no violence ever, and then in the same belief or teaching, they're saying, oh no, there's a justified reason here to fight. So again, how do we understand this or make sense of this?
Well, it's very clear that a human personality has to fight a battle to defend itself. That battle that many perceive First is more of an earthly manifestation of a battle which must have arisen in thoughts or has arisen through one's intuition. So the battles are fought before you have it manifesting in the way we have now seen it. The human personality must defend itself. And in that case, he has to fight an inner battle, clarifying its way, such that many a thing which had been set in front of him or her is able to overcome. How that battle may manifest here on earth varies from person to person, from one culture to another culture. But those battles are battles which are fought first in spirit, then it precipitates to the ethereal sphere before it now precipitates into the confrontation and the violence that one sees out there. However, it is possible for the individual to fight a battle in which violence as we see it now is not involved. There are many a battle that can be fought. Battle against ignorance, battle against hunger. However, ignorance and hunger must be considered, or the concept of ignorance, the concept of hunger must be considered in such a way that it is that which is intuitive, which one has to hold on to first.
Thank you, Gregory, for that answer. Again, you're pointing to there's the physical concepts, and then there's the spiritual concepts, and even this gave the example of thoughts, where we don't even see the thoughts, and yet we can, in quotes, fight with our thoughts. So, and somebody might say, oh, fighting is wrong. But wait a minute. In what sense do you mean that is wrong? Fighting is wrong. So really what it shows is we really need to be very clear about these concepts, you know, and how they apply. Otherwise, yes, I could see that some people may be able to twist to justify, oh no, we should be fighting this one, or we shouldn't be fighting that one. People can easily play this game, but then we really need to reflect. Yes, what do we mean? You don't attack, obviously, for no reason. In self-defense, yes, are you going to defend, or are you going to let somebody knock you out, or kill you? So, because it's about, you have to think of what is important here. So yes, everything in the right context. We need to make sure we understand it. So thank you very much, Gregory. Now, listeners, just to remind you, you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, that's Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is, it takes courage to recognize the truth. It takes courage to recognize the truth. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number. I'm going to give you it with the prefix, which is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'll just repeat that. It's +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1. .com. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 again, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of our show, which is It Takes Courage to Recognize the Truth. And then when the show finishes at 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to a recording of the show also on YouTube. Go to the search box and again type in the same words, which are Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1, space, Grail Message, space, It Takes Courage to Recognize the Truth. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.fm/radio/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 there. Now, I started the show by explaining how the topic title was chosen, and it was referring to these political claims that people make, and let's say many people are led or misled and follow them. And when somebody decides, has a look, scrutinizes the claims, one starts wondering, is this really workable, or is it just fantasy talking? Because people are, it seems, because they're not investigating, can easily be misled by them, especially even the claims can be lies, just to win the vote, because they think there's a populism that this is the way we can get power, because the people are facing certain problems which they think somebody is to blame for that, and then this, of course, the person to blame is never you, it's always someone else. That's how we always think, the blame is always on someone else. Well, the truth is somehow something very different, and it does take courage to recognize the truth. So, what do I want to say or ask about that? Now, yes, I will. There's something, especially in the UK, which has become a hot topic of discussion. Whether it's a real problem is another point, but it has become a hot topic of discussion, where they are what we see. They call them illegal immigrants crossing from France into Britain over the channel in small boats. That's how they call it, and without passing the border control. So that's why they are considered, in quotes, illegal. Now, what we know from fact is when they cross over, these immigrants, illegal or not illegal, they claim asylum, and so around 70% seem to get their asylum, even if it takes a long time to get to the asylum process. And the asylum is meaning they are refugees. The only thing is, so the politician, many people, I'm going to just say it in a very straight way, try to fool and lie to the public. They call them illegal. Yes, but they forget to mention that there's no safe routes for the migrants to cross over. They also, when the person is a refugee, they can never be illegal however they enter, because there's no possible refugee has right to enter. It's not about whether they're legal or illegal. So you cannot even call it illegal, because they're considered, when you're a refugee, that is out of the question. So unfortunately, people are being told things and misled, and then the public, like sheep, follows it. And nobody, let's say, makes these things clear. Out of ignorance, people are following, let's say. And that's the advantage these politicians make claims with. And the politicians know what they're saying. That's I call it a lie. They know exactly what they're saying, but they have no fear of telling lies. And just because people are, let's say, the people have maybe a justified right, oh, they're flooding this country, and whatever is the reason, and taking our job, whatever is the question they make, and even those are false, because it's only a perception which has been grown out of misinformation or something. Once you start meeting the actual person, then you think, oh, this person is not like that, what I thought. So what I'm pointing to here, a lot of ignorance, a lot of lies, and this builds some sort of momentum, and people follow it. And so Gregory, like I said, the topic is it takes courage to recognize the truth. And people are not spending, let's say, the effort, the necessary effort to determine if something is true or not really true. So my question on that is, how can one, I don't know, is it educate oneself or, let's say, verify that what is being claimed, whatever the people are, whoever it is, how can we ensure that what we are being told is, true? And the other point is, Gregory, when solutions are put forward, that's the second point, they're told, oh, turn the boats back or something like that, and these are in reality unworkable because of safety and other reasons, many reasons. And again, these are people are making claim as if it's a simple job to sort this problem out. So, Gregory, the first question is, how can we find the truth about this situation, this particular scenario I've given here? And then, let's look at that one first.
Actually, you will find that this particular scenario you mentioned has to do with resources or perceived resources. Those people who have left their origin of birth and their country and are going to other places, be rest assured, if they had silver and gold and resources worth up to millions and millions, then they'll be permitted to enter because the country they have entered will make use of those resources immediately. Now, the destination country, what has not been considered is the potentials of these people who have left their origin and proceeding to a destination country. One was also considered that the country they are proceeding to may not know how to respond to help these people out, even if these people are knowledgeable. One made that statement because you had the case of Germany, in which there was problem in Syria. And that being the case, they allowed millions to come in with little resources, and they knew how to structure things such that those people will become of good use in that country. They did well because they know how to handle the case. The other case, which happened years ago, maybe in the 80s or early 90s, was when the so-called East Germany broke down after the communist era. There had to be a unification in which that country took in everybody and built a very strong economy, albeit gradually, because they knew what to do and they knew how to do it. The fact remains now that where people are proceeding to, we not know what to do and may not even know how to do it. Therefore, from their own standpoint, they feel or they sense that it's going to take them a lot of resources, and therefore they don't want people to come in. That is a scenario which these migrants have not considered. But all these things is a matter of resources, economic resources. For the arguments for and against becomes very simple. They want to come to share our resources. We don't even have enough. You cannot fault that. You cannot give somebody that which you don't have. So when people come and they say they want to come and share for what you have, even as an individual, you look into yourself and say you lack that which will enable one to handle it. Because you are considering that these people who are the migrants do not have the resources. For now, you're not considering the potentials which they have, the usefulness which they may bring to the so-called economy. So that is why you find all these things are dependent on the economy. However, one should be careful so as not to, make promises to people who are fleeing different countries. Because you have the scenario where you may leave one country and go to another country, and if that which you are running away from, if that has become a habit within yourself, you may go to the destination country and exhibit the same thing. So everyone must consider what drives them to move from one country to the other. For one who needs to migrate, it's advisable to have a skill. Which skill that individual can build on? That means For you to go to another country, make a change from the source so that you have a skill that can enable you to move forward. Otherwise, you will find just as people are rejecting you in your destination, you yourself would have rejected others coming to your country. So as long as people have the right perspectives, that it's a matter of the economy, it's a matter of the resources, then people will make the right adjustment. Why is it that when they leave their country, they want to come to the UK? There are so many reasons behind these things. For the UK was the so-called colonizing authority long time ago. If one is permitted to look into the ethereal and into past earth lives, the fact remains that it is possible that those who were UK citizens at that time in their past earth lives had done many a thing that made them to incarnate in other countries, but they still have that strong inclination about the UK, and therefore they will have to fight tooth and nail to come to the UK. The reasons are so varied. Each individual, if they examine themselves very thoroughly, they will come to an understanding, and many of the aggressive posturing and the lack of understanding will vanish.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this answer and the picture that you've shown to us, where we can say objectively, oh, you're looking at, let's say, the immediate problems and things happening, and the cause of it goes deeper from the past. The story didn't start last few years. It has been going on very long time. And people just think, oh, now I see the problem. Yes, but yes, you see the problem, but you don't know what's behind it. As they say, what lies behind it. So that requires a deeper reflection. I think I mentioned earlier, when there's something going on to you, you say, oh, it's somebody else to blame. But maybe the blame is somewhere closer to home if one open their eyes.
Correct.
Now, because again, when you get to know, in our show we talk always about these laws of nature or the laws of creation. So everything has a cause, because there's something led to the next thing to happen. So if you do it very, very correctly, and then one of the special thing about the laws, it has love and justice inside their laws. If that is the case, then if something happening, there's love and justice inside it, which is higher than our human understanding of justice, or the earthly justice that we are familiar with. So that is, let's say, the real justice, not the justice that earthly laws think that is justice. And when we can, and that is called spiritual. So basically what we are saying is we need to start looking up higher to to realize that. Now, Gregory, there's another question which is at the beginning. It's the words at the beginning of the Grail Message. It is even before the foreword, which is I read pretty much every show at the end of each show, and that these words are: "He who makes no effort to grasp the word of the Lord burdens himself, he who makes no effort to grasp the word of the Lord aright burdens himself with guilt. So my question on that, Gregory, what does this mean?
Well, the word of the Lord, that's basically are the laws of creation. It means the individual must strive to understand the laws of creation rightly. Only through weighing and examining, and through that method, the individual builds up confidence. And with confidence comes trust. So that is how it is. And when one understands rightly these laws of creation, through which he himself or herself, or through which all that exists rests, then that individual strives in such a way as to ensure that the challenges that it might encounter subsequently, those challenges are minimized. Those challenges will be such that guilt will be minimized, and subsequently it will cause no harm to any other person who, like himself or herself, is striving to grasp the living word of the Lord rightly. In that case, the individual does not burden himself or herself.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this answer. Now, dear listeners, we come to the end of the show tonight on the topic of it takes courage to recognize the truth. And I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. I'm going to now end with, like our usual way, to read from the foreword of the Grail Message, which is titled, For Your Guidance. The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The falling word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches. while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all the obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God, Apushin. So, dear listeners, if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Now, Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing listeners a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you. Same for me, listeners. Have a wonderful week ahead. We'll be back as usual next Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. Good night. Take care.